I'm CWO4 Victor Pinion, U.S. Navy retired, telling some stories about my naval career. This one I've touched on in an earlier story about during my first tour of duty in the Navy when I made third class petty officer, or when I was studying for third class. It had become clear to me that the people in V2 Division studied differently than other folks did, in that they didn't use the technical publications. And I later learned that they badmouthed people who did as not knowing what they're doing. So if you got to go look it up in a book, you don't know what you're doing. You're not professional. Well, I studied the books and learned how to use them on my own. And when I went up for third class, I only went up for one time, and I made it. I was the only one among 26 people in V2 Division aboard the Ticonderoga that was promoted to third class petty officer from that exam cycle. And I credited it to I studied. Well, this thing of being reluctant to use the technical publications, I learned over the years was people justifying their inadequacies by focusing the attention elsewhere. Like, if you have to go to the book, you don't know what you're doing. Well, they didn't know how to use the book, so they justified it by bad-mouthing anyone who did. Well, I made third and they didn't. Ta-da! That says something. Well, years later, and catapult and rescue gear people aboard aircraft carriers were exempted from the Naval Aircraft Maintenance Program, the NAMP. We had been supported by V6 Division in a lot of our maintenance infrastructure, such as tech pub libraries, specialty shops, and tool rooms and so forth, hydraulic shops and whatnot. Well, the NAMP took V6 Division and disestablished it and used its assets to create the Aviation Intermediate Maintenance Department, AIMD. Well, when they disestablished V6 Division, it's no longer exists in the Air Department, and so they took that infrastructure stuff with them. They're now supporting aircraft maintenance, and we were left without it, and just to drift as best we could. Well, we had not had to. Well, my predecessors, my senior people, and my technical specialists, because I was very junior, had not had to manage that kind of those things previously. So now they didn't know how, and we didn't have any training really on how to. So our technical publications usage deteriorated over the years, as in the quality of our technical publications. We just didn't have them that as many as we needed, and they weren't kept up to date like they had previously been by V6 Division. Well, when I was a chief aboard the Ranger, I decided to exploit the general quarters, battle stations time, where the ship would go to GQ and they might be doing engineering drills, and we're not included, we're not launching and landing airplanes, so the crew would just lay around and sleep or play cards or whatever and waste that time. So I decided to teach the bow catapult crew. I was the bow cats chief on the Ranger at this time frame. I decided I'd teach them about the technical publications, which ones were available, how they were organized, how to use them. Well, there were several factors there. One was a chief was not, the crew was not accustomed to a chief being that involved. And the catapult captains, a couple of first class petty officers, who were, by the way, very good men. They were very good men. It's just that they had grown up under the old system, and They just didn't really know how to use the tech pub. They didn't know which ones were available to use. And when they were presented with one, they didn't know how to use it. They didn't know how to look up information in them. So I decided I would teach them about the tech pubs. So I gathered them up in catapult number 2's retraction engine room. Had a nice big space at the end of it, and I had a chalkboard there. And they would sit around either on the deck or in chairs or on cable cars or whatever. And I first showed up the first time with a whole bunch of tech pubs. And I told them that each machine, like the catapult, the throttle arrestor, the jet blast deflector, the nose gear launch equipment, and so forth, were each different machines, and each one of them had a set of publications, like the operating instructions that described the machine, told you exactly how it worked, and what you did to operate it. Then there was a maintenance overhaul instruction. Now these are great big, thick handbooks in 3-wing binders. And then the third one was the illustrated parts breakdown, with that exploded views of the machinery and each part is numbered and so forth. So I introduced them to those. There was a set of those for the catapult, set for the jet blast deflector, set for the throttle arrestor, and so forth. Okay, and I showed them each one as I introduced it. And I also told them we also have other publications such as blueprints for the machinery and service bulletins that provided special information concerning the operation and maintenance of the machinery, and service changes, which were field changes to the machinery. And I showed them. I had them in 3-wing binders, and I showed them. And then I started off with the operating instructions handbook, and I showed them. Right up in the front of the book, it tells you about the book, it tells you how it's organized, and tells you how to use it. All you have to do is be able to read that information. Well, I read it to them. I showed it to them in the book. Well, the young men were all eager and excited about that training. But the 2 first-class petty officers, the catapult captains, when I would check for understanding by asking people questions, when I would ask one of them a question they wouldn't know, they would be embarrassed. Well, I continued. Every time we had GQ and we weren't launching and landing airplanes, I did that tech pub training. And that was pretty frequent. Well, the first class resented me conducting that training. It's not so much that they resented the training. They had a whole lifetime of their career of training to fall back on, like anybody that used the tech pub don't know what they're doing. Okay. I'm trying to change attitudes and teach them. You don't just have to go ask someone else how this works. You can look it up yourself if you know how. This is how. But these 2 first-class veterans put their heads together and they decided that I was humiliating them by having them in that training. Well, they're not separate from their crews during GR quarters. They're right. You're manned up in battle stations. So you're all together. If you're not actually launching an airplane, you congregate below deck somewhere, like whatever. But I have them all together. It's a captive audience, so I'm exploiting that time to teach them about the technical publications. Well, the 2 first-class petty officers went to the division officer, complaining about me humiliating them by requiring them to attend that training with their crews. The division officer came to me and said, "Chief, are you making them eat humble pie?" I said, "Well, sir, that's not the reason. The reason is they don't know how to use these publications, and I'm teaching them how." He said, "Yeah, but they think you're embarrassing them in front of their crews. So you need to teach them separate from their crews." I didn't like that because it meant I had to, do it differently and do the senior petty officer different from their junior crew members. But I did. And it worked. It worked. People learned about it. And I'm very happy about that. I continued to do that kind of training for the duration of my naval career. And guess what? On my next ship, I was the maintenance officer, and the chiefs complained because I was humiliating them. But it didn't work. I continued with the training. It worked. Aboard the Ranger, I became aware that my crew, the Malcats crew, after they'd received that kind of training and previous while we've been in the shipyard, that Biocatapult crew advanced in rank, rating, pay grade faster than the rest of the division. For the next couple of advancement cycles, the only people in B2 division of any pay grade to be advanced were from my crew. And by God, I'm happy about that. Y'all carry on.